Everybody, this is the first Lunch and Learn of the year. I think we've got a really great lineup for everybody. It'll be fun to see what everybody presents every month. If anyone has any ideas of future meetings or future Lunch and Learns, let us know and we'll try to see if we can incorporate that in next year's. We've already got this year's all planned out. So today we're going to talk about Hugelkultur. That is the Texas way of saying it, Hugelkultur. I don't want to cough up a loogie to try to do it in German, so they also call it Hugelbed because literally Hugelkultur is the German word meaning mound bed or mound culture, and it's just a type of raised bed. So all of us do raised beds these days. So this is just a way for you to create your raised bed. It's not the only way. There's ways you might end up modifying. There are all kinds of things on Google searches that you can see where other people have done all kinds of different things to modify the Hugelkultur bed. But anyway, it was, let's see, make sure I didn't miss anything. The whole idea is it actually does two things for your moisture. It holds moisture in because of the logs, but it also keeps everything up in the air. So if you've got a soggy spot, keeping the raised bed, we all know, will help you with the drainage. So Hugelkultur is a type of permaculture. Hello. And what is permaculture? Permaculture is just getting in touch with your nature, okay? It's using stuff that's around, it's recycling, it's being green without being green. The term permaculture was coined in 1978 by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, who formulated the concept. And what they were trying to do is they saw all these industrialized methods going on, and they were like, let's get back to nature. Let's get back to what God does for us already, and let's go back into a more natural approach. So, Hugelkultur mound components. The biggest thing that kind of makes this bed different than most other beds is you're using wood in it. You're not just putting wood around it that decays as you're working your beds, but you're putting wood at the bottom and the foundation of your bed. So you want to use fresh and decaying if you want it to last longer. Obviously, the decaying kind of helps start the process. The whole idea is you want the breaking down, the decomposition, but you also want to put in some fresh logs in there. We'll talk about which kinds in shortly, so that you have something else for you to draw on. So it just will make the bed last longer if you put both new and old logs in. Then you go with your branches. Those are your limbs. It can be your cuttings that you took off of when you're pruning back. It can be stuff that you got now that you've got all the stuff that fell off of the roof line and your trees when we had that really strong wind come through this week. Also, you got yard waste is your next one. That's grass clippings, leaves, pine cones, needles, hay. What I will tell you is the Hugelkultur bed is usually designed with at least 80% brown material. Okay, so it's not when you're doing composting you put more green matter in, but with this one you're putting in 80%, at least 80% brown and only 20% green. The other thing I want to remind you is when you're throwing in branches, be careful that the branches aren't too new, because you could literally start a nice little tree in there if if you got some good buds going on in there. Then you have your compost, and this is going to be not your compost that's already made up completely. It doesn't have to be that. It can just be dried manure, kitchen scraps, and then you're going to put your soil. And depending on what you did, how you created your bed, you might already have soil there next to it, or you have to use soil from somewhere else, or you might even have to purchase soil. So if you purchase soil, remember you want to purchase soil that doesn't have any chemicals and other stuff if you're trying to go natural. So going forward, I think I'll be calling this a hugel bed, because the kultur is really the bed. So if you call it hugel bed, you're literally saying the same thing. So here's some questions you need to ask before you start your hugel bed. One is, are you trying to control an erosion problem? Because that could be a help for you. Are you looking to hold more water around established root systems? I read one article where they were putting a Hugelkultur bed next to an established fruit trees because these fruit trees were on compacted ground and they just didn't have any place for their roots to go. So it wasn't in the hugel bed itself, and the reason why you don't want to put it in the fresh hugel bed is because the hugel bed will just keep going lower and lower and lower, so it's going to lose its stability if you put a nice sized tree or shrub in that hugel bed. Will the bed get the necessary sunlight for the plants to be added? So it might be the perfect place for you to put it for erosion, but will you get enough sun for the plants that you're interested in planting? And maybe you have to change your idea of what you want to have planted there if you really want the bed to be there. What size do I want the bed to be? They talk about putting your hugel bed, starting it at 6 foot high, because it's going to go down and down and down, and within the next 5 to 6 years, it's going to be more or less a flat or a slightly raised bed when you get done. So what size do you want the bed to be? How tall do you want the bed to be? Just because you can stack it to 7 feet or 8 feet doesn't mean you have to, okay? Again, it depends upon what you're trying to accomplish. A lot of people like to have it because it makes it easier for them to work it when they're not down on their knees working in their beds. What plants do I want to incorporate into the bed? What materials do I need to gather or purchase? So you don't want to just start doing this and then realize you don't have any soil, for instance. So make sure you've got all the materials you need. And then are there septic fields? Oh, that should have been an R. Are there septic fields or underground utilities that you need to avoid? Most of us are not in the situation with the utilities, but it's important that you don't put it over your septic lines, because if they have to do any digging up or whatever, it can also add extra weight. So you don't want to put it on your septic fields. So now I have this guy that's talking, and I don't know if this is going to come out very loud or not. My Musi baby is not very loud. But listen to it, and if we can't, well then at least I can tell you what he's talking about as he goes through.
Hugelkultur has become our favorite way for my wife and I to grow our own food. We built 3 hugel beds in the fall of 2020, and we had our best garden ever growing in these last year. It's probably hard to tell that this is actually one of the beds in front of me. It's settled down quite a bit since I built them. But anyway, there are many different ways to build a Hugelkultur bed, so I decided to make a list of 5 of the most common methods so you can decide for yourself how you might like to build one. These days, Hugelkultur has become quite popular thanks to platforms like YouTube and other social media, which enable gardeners from all over the world to share their experiences using this method. So with that, you've probably already heard of Hugelkultur before you clicked on this video, but if not, you could always check out my playlist with the link down below or at the end of this video. The basic idea with Hugelkultur is to pile up logs, branches, leaves, compost, and soil in that order. You can also add in or substitute materials like grass clippings, garden waste, wood chips, straw, leaf mold, or well-rotted manure. Keep in mind that most of the material should be brown, woody matter with only 20% or less being green, nutrient-rich material. And the bigger the logs, the better. Larger wood pieces will take longer to decompose, and as they do, they'll soak up more water and release their nutrients over a much longer period. So with that, let us now explore 5 ways to build a Hugelkultur bed. The first method is to use any kind of raised bed. It could be a shorter one like this, or a taller metal frame, whatever you have, and then fill that with the material that I mentioned, starting with the larger wood pieces on the bottom, layering up to the soil on top. With a raised bed, you won't have to do any digging, so if you're unable to dig or you'd just rather avoid it, that would be the way to go. But then of course you will still have to bring in soil from elsewhere, whether you purchase that at the store or you happen to get some topsoil for free from a neighbor. Just make sure that it's going to be safe for growing food. And with any Hugelkultur bed, the material is going to settle down over time as that wood decomposes. So especially with a raised bed, you will have to keep adding more topsoil each year to keep the level close to the top of the bed. The second method is very similar to the first one, except rather than using a raised bed frame, you can just pile all the material directly on the ground. So of course, you will still have to bring in soil from elsewhere, and a thick layer of arborist wood chips all around the bed will help to keep weeds from creeping in around the edges. The last three methods all involve digging, and out of those three, this next one is probably the easiest, or the least amount of work anyway. You can build the pile like I showed in the last method, and then just dig up the topsoil all around the bed and pile it right on top. Of course, then you will have a slight depression all around the bed, but that will naturally act as a swale to catch rainwater that will slowly soak up into the bed. Then you'll wind up with a little bit of a muddy puddle, so you can add some wood chips around there, which will still allow the water to drain through without getting your feet too muddy. The fourth method was the one that I used to make our three beds. And I already showed how I did this in my first Hugelkultur video, but I'll sum it up again for you now. So I dug the trench for the first bed, and I piled that soil close to where the third bed was going to go. Then I filled in the material into the first trench, and as I was doing that, I started digging out the soil for the second bed and piling that under the first one. And I made sure to fill in all the gaps between the logs. Then I repeated that process for the next two beds. By the time I got to the end, I had the soil from the first bed waiting right there to go onto the third one. As you can imagine, that turned out to be a lot of digging by hand, but we had just gotten this tree cut down, and I wanted to use as much of the wood from this as possible, so it seemed that digging the trenches would be the best way to do that. And it was a lot of work. If I had to do it again, I would probably try to find a way to use the previous method to make it a little bit easier. This is still a great method, but it was definitely the most difficult to accomplish using only hand tools. And that's where we come to method number 5, which employs the use of heavy machinery to do all that digging for you. I call this the Holzer method, after permaculturist Sepp Holzer, who played a big part in popularizing the use of Hugelkultur. He dug deep trenches on his massive permaculture farm in Germany and filled those trenches with lots of dead wood and organic matter and piled up the soil to a height of about 6 feet. And a Hugelkultur bed that large can soak up so much water that it never needs to be irrigated. So if you have a huge property and access to some earth-moving equipment, by all means, go for it. So I hope that gave you some ideas on how you might decide to build a Hugelkultur bed for yourself, depending on your own situation. Coming soon, I will have a video about how to care for a Hugelkultur bed in the first few years after it's built and as it starts to mature on its own. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe for more videos like this. Stay safe out there, and happy Hugling.
I liked him because he showed it to you, and it's doable. You know, this is in his backyard. I was really, when I started talking about this subject, I was just looking at all the dead big trees laying around and trying to figure out how could we incorporate something like that into it. And so this is the shallow dig method that he was talking about. I thought I'd go over it just a little bit more. But I think again, I don't know that I would dig. Of course, I've got someone who can dig for me, right? It might be worth it to rent one of those cute little diggers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or the bucket on the tractor.
Yep. So here's a step-by-step build of a shallow dig. So choose your location of your bed, dig down. He was digging down about shovels, like 6 to 8 inches. And then he didn't show it very well on the pictures, but he saved the turf. If you can just cut the turf off, you can lay that turf back on your bed upside down so that hopefully it doesn't grow anything. Then you're going to place your logs and your big branches. He cuts his big logs to help decompose a little faster. Okay, and then you put all the little smaller branches around. It's important that you try to fill it in as tight as you can, because You could get pockets if you don't do that, or you can actually have collapses of your bed when your decomposing happens. Then you add your turf and topsoil, fill in your gaps as much as possible, water thoroughly. He didn't talk about watering thoroughly, but everything that I've read about this and other layers is it's always good to water heavily each one of your layers. So fill in your gaps as much as possible. It might just be with wood chips if you don't have anything else, but just something that you can make the bed. Bill has sawdust, so we're talking about incorporating sawdust in ours. Then you add wood chips, leaves, small branches, and kitchen scraps. Water again thoroughly. So again, this is kind of hard to see, but these are not just leaves. These are branches with leaves on them. And with us, pine cones and pine needles are just fine to put in your bed as well. Then you add a thick layer of composted material and water again, and this is where some people will throw in some red wigglers. Doesn't hurt, right? Yes, sir.
You don't want to put green pine needles in, they have to be
No,
dry.
it would be dried pine needles. Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Then you cover the mound in a thick layer of soil and finish with mulch, which it doesn't have on there, and water again completely. One of the things that I did see that I thought was really good when he was talking about the lazy method, where it was the trenching where you take the dirt and you put it on and you've got a little bit of a trench around. No matter which ones you do, it's a good idea to put something to stop the grass from growing in as much as possible. Obviously, what you want to do is get stuff grown into that bed before the weeds and the grass get a hold of it. Because that's what nature does. It covers up its bare spots. What to plant in your new hugel bed. Your nightshades are real happy in that. Your tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, garlic, onion, chives. If you're going to plant the onions, I would recommend you plant them on the top because you need, again, a more solid base, and that's where you're most solid. If you put it on the side and it hits an air spot, it's not going to produce your good size onion. Your brassicas, your broccoli, cabbage, kale, collards, arugula, cauliflower, all of those like being on this bed. Your herbs and small berry bushes, again, it suggests small berry bushes. It would depend upon what size it is. If you're putting in a really good size one and you want to put some blackberry brown, I would think that would work really well. Leafy greens, salad mixes, and herbs. So then what not to plant? So again, your root crops, at least your first year, you don't have enough, the soil is not compacted enough. And so what happens is as soon as your little carrot hits a airspace, it quits growing. So if you just absolutely want to put something in there, put in the little bulb-like carrots, put in the radishes, but I would really, especially your first year, stay away from your root crops. Same way with potatoes, and then the trees and shrubs. Again, just the fact that they will have a problem staying on top of that bed as it keeps dropping down. Yes, Michelle?
I wondered, when you plan these, have you thought about making sure that the sun doesn't go to just one side? Because you'll end up with one side being in shade too much of the day if you're not careful.
Right. So one of the things that they suggested was that you think about, you set something out there and look at your sun all day, and remember that during the winter, which is when you're probably going to be checking this out, you don't have any leaves on your trees. So make sure you remember that might be leaves on the trees that will keep it even more shaded. The other thing to think about is there are some plants that need lower light. So your lower light plants you can put on the darker side.
North side.
North side. I was never good with the north, south, east, west side. So then where to plant on the bed. We've already talked kind of about where to put the bed, but where to plant on the bed. So your Mediterranean-like herbs, your oregano and stuff like that, they'll like to be on the top because that's going to dry out the soonest. Your sun-loving plants need to grow where the sun shines longest. Place tall plants at the base where the roots will have more stability and will get more water. So I've got a picture of one where they've put the tomatoes along, kind of along the base line. It makes it easier for you to kind of trellis them up. Shady areas can be planted with salad greens and some herbs. You'll need to check and see what herbs like darker area, north side. Then plant nitrogen-fixing plants such as bush beans and field peas. This is the one, if I want to say there's a con, one of the cons of the hugel beds is that it's going to be using up a lot of the nitrogen in the bed because it's decomposing. So to offset that, you want to go ahead and plant some what we call nitrogen fixers. And those are plants that bring nitrogen, make the nitrogen usable, I think is the correct term for that. Is that correct, Noveline?
That's okay.
Okay? I didn't say anything too wildly incorrect. Bush beans, if you're letting it set for a while, you might be able to go ahead and put red clover on it, something like that. The other thing to do is when you've got your plants in, just keep an eye on them, and if they start showing signs of yellowing leaves, you might have to do some compost tea to kind of help them along a little bit. Your wildflower seeds are a great way to fill in your empty spaces. So again, nature has a way of covering up its bare spots. So if you just cover your hugel bed with everything, then and mulch, you're going to have a much better time of keeping the weeds out, because the weeds are going to fly and they're going to land, and then you're going to have weeds because weeds are happy out here. So plant every inch of your mound so the weed seeds will not have a place to go. So what are some of the pros of the hugel bed? So they heat up faster in the spring. They retain moisture. Need no further fertilizer. Again, that means once the bed starts what I call perking, or once the bed is breaking down, it's going to provide its own fertilizer. You might have to worry about the nitrogen, like I said at the beginning.
That could take a couple of years.
Up to 2 years, yes.
Okay, my question is, and this might be something more aimed toward noveling, when you bury logs, you create a great environment for termites, and especially having the moisture. So what's your thought on that?
I don't think you can keep that from happening.
No, you're right. You've made an environment where you're going to have to watch for termites, and you're going to have to watch for fire ants.
Yep.
And then if you have those things, then you're going to have to be super careful about how you manage those, because you've got a vegetable garden there, and a lot of the insecticides that you would reach for are not okay for a vegetable bed. Now, if you're growing nothing but ornamentals, you'd have a lot more freedom to control the little beasties that way. But that's probably not what you're
Right.
trying to accomplish.
I've never really had a problem with termites in the garden. I mean, they're there. I'm not saying they aren't there, but
They're not, the termites are not going to, they're not going to go after fresh growing plants, and they're not going to bite you while you're trying to work there. I worry more about fire ants than about termites, really.
right. And I think the fire ants are going to be more on the side of the bed or up. I mean, you'll be able to tell where they're at.
Yeah.
Because they've got to have an opening too. Use less irrigation. Produce more food in less space. The idea is that if you go up, you're obviously got more space to plant than if you were on a flat surface. Easier to weed. Again, the idea, there's two reasons why. One is if it's heavily mulched, it's much easier to pull out the weeds. And two, it's up a little bit, so you don't have to do, if you're like me, you don't have to go find something that you can grab so you can crawl back up. Makes use of excess material. Stuff you have around the house, I mean not around the house, around the yard, are rich in nitrogen. Again, that's the mature bed, and less bending, squatting for the gardener. So the cons, ants love the beds. I mean, it's just going to be a fact of life. Then air pockets can be favorite nesting spaces for small rodents. So that's why it's real important to try to pack it as well as possible to keep you from having little critters living in that. Root crops hit airspace and don't develop. Mound beds compress significantly over time. Now, just because it compresses doesn't mean you can't pile more stuff on top of it. But you need to be realistic, and if you're putting it up, like say for privacy or something like that, this is probably not going to be what is going to work the best for you. Also, if you're putting it up like a berm, maybe you're trying to work a water source going a different direction. Again, it's not permanent enough for you to do that. Eventually, the water is going to break through that. So it can manage your water somewhat, but it's going to be somewhat temporary. Lifespan of the bed is about 5 to 6 years. Soil dries out much faster than clay. Oh, sandy soil. I did have a couple of YouTube videos where I was watching that the guys had a lot of sandy soil. I've got sandy soil. And so it talks about the fact that you really need to figure out they talk about taking your branches and cutting them so that they make little spikes and putting them in and then laying your branches so that you've got a more of control over your slope. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to keep your slope. The very first rain you've got, it all just slides down. So if you plan and I think I've got some pictures that show that, if you actually put some of your branches upright and put them towards the front, you have up towards the apex, it gives you a better chance of keeping your bed in a shape that you're looking for. So why would you want to build a hugel bed? Again, you can utilize the materials on your property instead of burning it or hauling it off. You want to be more green by using materials provided. You prefer to put more effort in creating the bed now so that you will require less work for the next 5 years or so. You're looking to grow plants without having to water. Maybe you don't even have a water source available and you're having to haul water to water something. This would be a good alternative for that. Hoping to provide a place for tree roots in compacted soil, which I had talked about. That's kind of a unique use of this raised bed. And then raise plants above the ground that stays too wet. So I have some real low-lying areas that if I had any kind of a raised bed, it would help keep those from getting their roots too wet. And then aesthetics. I don't know, something about a totally flat garden bed versus a garden that has a little bit of movement in it is aesthetically pleasing. The other could be that you put it in your front yard, or you work around and just make it maybe just gives more interest to your property. So again, these are some copies of some pictures that I took off of Google, and I thought this was real interesting. The one over there on the far right, they're growing corn on this bed, which I find interesting. But look how high they've got this up here. And again, it'll start breaking down. I can see cucumbers growing well on these hugel beds, and melons too. Pumpkins. Here's the one that actually does have it does have a big sunflower in it. They also put logs around the base, and I've noticed that in a couple of them. And if you put something like that around the base, it kind of helps it from spreading out. So that helps too. So this looks like a cemetery bed. But notice that they use rocks. I don't know about you guys, I have no rocks in my property. But that would be something else that obviously would make it more permanent as far as the shape. This is real pretty. Isn't that pretty? And again, they just use the rocks along the sides to hold it in place. The other option obviously would be to plant all the way down. Another one talked about putting straw bales of hay around it instead of your logs to keep it in shape. Again, it's going to break down over time. It's just a much thicker material than if you were just laying a layer. So this is using bales of hay. This was a unique one. This one goes quite a ways up, and in order to keep it in shape, they put up pallets. I thought that was real pretty. A lot of people talk about using this for strawberry beds. So I could see a strawberry bed in this, really pretty. This one was a demonstration bed, and you can see where they've got their logs up quite a bit higher than I would normally put my logs, but it gives you an idea of what a Hugelkultur bed looks like inside. This one they're using branches to keep it in shape, and your little iron rebar. Yeah. Very good. This is I would call it a maturing vegetable bed. You've got your, I guess that's garlic, possibly, and you've got some greens in there. He's even got, again, he's got corn up there on the top. This is real pretty. This is, see, and it's not very high. This one's probably no more than, I would say, 3 feet. But it fits well in your garden without it being too shady on either side.
Teresa, that one, back one, did he like plant that intermingled to help support some of the bigger ones, help support some of the smaller ones maybe? Does that make sense?
Yeah, corn is really bad. When corn gets real tall, it flops around. So I could see how, but really what they're trying to do is talk about, you can plant it more intensively because you've got a water source, and you've got, you've got the nutrients coming directly from the dirt.
Teresa, you could probably, on something like that, use popcorn, because it doesn't get nearly as tall as most kinds of plant.
There you go. Is it true that popcorn, all you have to do is take that just the little popcorn and just put it in a bag and it pops, you don't have to take it off of the husk?
I've never tried that, but it's not,
Oh, it's not hard to pull
it's
off.
not hard to just pull it right off.
Here, this one, he's got, see where they're planting the tomato plants down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And they're using some metal to keep it in shape. This one is using the method that we talked about, where you're giving the root systems of your fruit trees someplace else to go, and also obviously keep it from getting too dry. So I thought that was a really good idea. We all baby our fruit trees when we first get them out there.
So that's on a slope.
Yeah.
It catches the
Yeah,
water.
it's catching the water too. Obviously, this was just done. They need to put something on it, or our nature's going to put something on it. There's another bed. This really looks real similar to what. I just wanted to show you they're using the big wood. They even got that looks like some old lumber up there. And then this is my favorite. I'm going to get Bill to build me this one. I just thought, well, that would be fun, just to walk around and see planted in flowers and vegetables. I just think that'd be gorgeous. Anyway, those are my references. The video was from this guy, Some Room to Grow, and he has some excellent videos if you're interested in watching that and want more information.